Welcome to the First District 3 podcast with Councilwoman Shameka Parrish-Wright of District 3 and with Marilyn Harris, the Director of the Office of Housing and Community Development. We are going to be talking about home ownership in District 3 today. I am Ben, your Legislative Assistant for District 3, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. So, Councilwoman, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your interest in housing, and then we'll put it over to Director Harris.
Thank you, Ben. We are excited about this podcast series, and we wanted to start with housing. It's a very important topic that we've not only used in our campaign for Metro Council, but one of the things that I used in my campaign for mayor as someone who's been directly impacted by homelessness, affordable housing. I was a Section 8 recipient, and my husband and I finally were able to purchase a home in Shively in 2018. So our housing journey, being chronically unhoused for a very long time in my 47 years on this earth, housing is very important for all of us. Everyone wants a safe, clean, adequate place to go home to. And in Louisville, I feel like we have made many attempts to right some wrongs with the redlining and with all the things that have happened. And please, let's give a big shout out to our pioneers of the housing actions that have happened over the years in Louisville, like Susie Post and Bob Cunningham, and just amazing people. And even as someone who was unhoused, I worked with Metropolitan Housing Coalition on the housing action team to help establish a housing trust fund. And I remember how that felt being unhoused and staying in my car and being at Wayside. So we've come a long way in housing for Louisville, but we know that we can do better. And so we're excited to work in partnership, but we have to get some education and awareness around the housing issues and what people can do to access the many services that are there to help people. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to finally sit across from Marilyn, not in my council chambers and not over email. We're in a lot of shared emails together, as I am on the board of the Homeless the Coalition for the Homeless. I was on the Continuum of Care board for many years, but now I'm on the bigger board. And I on that board as one of the people who've actually experienced homelessness not once, but twice in our city. I'm also an example of navigating those processes and gaining what we all want is affordable home ownership. But the pathway to home ownership looks different for many of us. So we're happy to sit down with you with some questions that my legislative aide, Ben Harlan, has come up with based on the communications we're already getting since we started in office on November the 13th of 2023. So a lot of the questions we have are based on what people have already been calling us about. And we've already worked together in conjunction with caseworkers and case managers to work to help keep people housed, because I think that's always the best thing to do. At the rates that our unhoused community are growing, it's very scary, and I'm really worried about it. And it's younger people. It's people my older adult children's ages and younger who are finding these issues. So thank you for being with us tonight, and hopefully we can answer some questions for folks.
We'll try. I'll do my best, I promise.
Yes, thank you, Director Harris. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then go into the first question, which is, what is the Office of Housing and Community Development, and what programs exist to help renters and homeowners in Jefferson County?
So the Office of Housing and Community Development is the really the core functions of that are we administer all of the federal housing dollars that come into our city, being Community Development Block Grant and the Home Investment Partnership Program, which are very specific to housing and community development, thus our name, the Office of Housing and Community Development. But it really encompasses more than that. So we also have our vacant lots division, our vacant and abandoned properties division. We do home ownership. So we have $4 million a year right now for home ownership assistance, down payment and closing cost assistance. We have been using CDBG and the American Rescue Dollar Plans for our home repair program. We have a code alleviation. So if you are someone who has had a lien or a code violation from a code inspector on your house, you can reach out to our department, and we have a code alleviation program that can help you. We have the let me switch for a second. Let me backtrack. We also do the Lead Safe Louisville program. And a lot of times we tie that in with just our regular home repair program. So when we go into a unit, someone has applied for our program, they have a child under the age of 6 that has that lives in that house, or is in that house for 6 hours or more a week, they are eligible for the program. And so we would test the house to make sure if it's pre-1978. And that's the real key. 1978 is the year that lead-based paint was outlawed in homes. And so the house has to be pre-1978. And if it comes back that there's any lead in that house, we will use our lead-safe Louisville dollars to either remediate, encapsulate, or remove the lead, depending on what process we undertake and where the lead is. And so we will use that, but then we also tie that in with regular home repair dollars if we can. So maybe the bathroom has a leak, maybe the roof is leaking, maybe the electric is, 80 amps and they need 150 amps. It could be any number of issues. We generally stick to main systems, your major systems, so roofing, plumbing. We try to stay away from foundation problems because they are very expensive. And we have this really horrid law that if we spend more than $25,000, we then have to completely remove any lead in a unit. And in some cases, that can be $80,000, $90,000 worth of work. So we try and stay under this $25,000 because it takes us from a de minimis, and that's a very technical term, but a de minimis level of lead remediation or encapsulation to full removal. So so all of our home repair programs, because of the Paint Renovation and Repair Act, the Renovation and Repair and Paint Act, we have to do that on every single unit. So whether a child lives in the home or not, if we go over $25,000 in repairs, we then trigger this act, and then we have to use the dollars to alleviate, remove the lead, which can be very expensive in some cases. So we are kind of stuck at this $25,000 cap, and that doesn't do a lot. That $25,000 cap is the same cap that it was in 1994.
Wow.
And it really interestingly, years ago, Ben Carson came to the city and he had a meeting with all of us. And he said, what can we do to help you? What red tape can we get rid of? What policy can we change? And I raised my hand and I said, could we get that $25,000 change? That's $25,000 and $94. That's more like $50,000 now, and we're still playing with that same. So, unfortunately, that didn't happen. But
so there's been no update on that since then?
There's no update whatsoever, and it's really kind of one of the worst things that we're dealing with because $25,000 does not go as far today as it did in 94.
Right, nothing does.
Nothing does. And so really we have to pick and choose what repairs we're going to make. And it ends up being, if we do a roof and if we do an HVAC, we might be able to get some plumbing for $25,000. It gets very expensive very fast. So we will go up to $25,000. We will go over occasionally if it's a health and safety issue that we've really got to address. But we try and stick right at $25,000 because we don't want to trigger that other law.
Right. And so is that program just for homeowners, or do you do it for like landlords too, who may need it for their tenants?
That's a really good question, Ben. Our home repair program is only for persons that own their home.
So occupied home ownership.
Home ownership. However, the Lead Safe Louisville program actually will work for a tenant living in a unit. We will go in and we will make the lead safe repairs to that house, and then we'll put a deed restriction on the landlord's property for 5 years so that they then make sure that unit stays affordable to a low-income household for the next 5 years.
That's powerful. I've never heard of that.
That's absolutely, we do it. One of the things that we are really concerned about is making sure that the dollars we put into units keep the units affordable. And I would love to have perpetual affordability in every unit that we do, but it's just not feasible. So when we do a home repair program, when we do a home repair unit, it is a 3-year period that they have to promise they won't sell the unit. So we're not going to go in, fix it up, and they're going to turn around tomorrow and flip it and make money. Mm-hmm. That's not what we're about. We are about making the unit decent, safe, warm, dry, sanitary, pest free, all of those things. That's really what we want to do. We want to want to make it a place that people want to live. We want people to be able to remain in their homes.
I love that.
And so I didn't have this question until later, but you just got into it. So I guess it's a two-part question is, first of all, how do people qualify, whether they be tenants or owners, for some of these programs, and how do they access them? And what has been your experience with Louisville residents and utilizing these programs and reaching out to your office?
So what has happened historically, first of all, there's never enough money to go around. Never. I don't care how much we put in. There's never enough money to go around. What year are we in? We are in fiscal year 24. So July of 22, we had $7 million. We had $3 million of CDBG and $4 million of American Rescue Plan. So $7 million of home repair program dollars. We decided we could assist at $25,000 a unit. We could assist about 380 people when we took that into account. We opened the program at 8 a.m. on July 1st. Turned out to be the hottest day of the year. And when we opened the program at 8 a.m., the line was out our front door all the way down the block past Muhammad Ali. And by 3 o'clock that afternoon, we had over 1,200 applications.
I believe it.
In the program.
I believe
it.
The need is so great.
Great.
We got some money before for another organization I worked for, just some short-term money that we could use to help pay deposits or back rent to prevent evictions, because I'm with you. If we can keep people housed, let's keep them housed. That benefits the landlord. That benefits the people. It builds stability for the people, but also for the landlords, it gets them an income that they can actually count on. If I've heard from many landlords that said they don't even start to see a profit until the second year of the lease, because the monies it takes to get the upper unit ready and all of those things, they spend a lot on the front end, but by the second to third lease, they start to see a profit. So I am pro landlord. I just don't want it done on the backs of people who need a decent place to live. And I myself have experienced a landlord where my brother got lead poisoning. He was actually born in 1978. And when he was tested, his counts were so high, and they were so high that they caused problems, and he had anger issues. My brother went to prison. Who knows where all of that came from? But I know his lead poisoning was so high. And so I'm glad that to hear these initiatives in place. And when I hear that number, as soon as you open your doors and then by the end of the day you have over 1,200 applicants, I am just blown away. I know the need is great, and we see it in our work, but this is phenomenal to know. So, yeah, I think we want to do our part in helping and anything we can do to help make sure that those initiatives get funding and get renewed, and also that more people in the community know about it, and that we can work together with businesses and business owners to pick up some of the weight of that.
Thank you. I'm really glad that you are supportive of this endeavor. Last year alone in District 3, just in District 3, we did 43 home repair grants, and we have 60 that we are working on right now. So we will have assisted 103 households in District 3 with the end of this year's money, which is that's pretty good.
That's substantial.
We only do about 300 units a year. So the fact that 100 of them are from your district is really it says something. So the word got out last year when the program opened. I want to go back to what you said just a second ago about landlords and making a profit on the second year. I think it's important to understand that when a landlord evicts someone, they lose money.
Yeah.
It is very, very expensive to evict someone. And I'm not talking about the money it takes to go across the street to the courthouse. I'm talking about the money it takes for a good landlord. And I'm going to qualify that with a good landlord who, when that unit becomes vacant, they shampoo the carpets, they paint the walls, they really give their unit some love so it's ready for the next household. And that's very expensive. In some cases, it can be $5,000 or $6,000.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember that landlords most of the time have a mortgage. It's very rare that a landlord doesn't have a mortgage on a unit. So you're right. They don't a lot of landlords, and as we did eviction prevention over the last 3 years, we've heard a lot of people say, well, landlords are making money hand over fist. They truly are not. They invest that money into the property, and we could go into like capitalism as a whole, but the fact
I don't think that's for this podcast.
Yeah, right. My
Next
point
time,
exactly.
You're coming back.
My point exactly. But the fact is that we have landlords in this community who are excellent landlords, and they really are doing us a service by providing really great housing. And they don't want to evict people. They don't want to set somebody out on the street. And sitting in eviction court, and I sat in eviction court every day for almost a year, and it is heart-wrenching. And so we don't want to evict people. We know for a fact that when people are evicted, that their quality of housing goes down 1 grade every time they have an eviction. And I honestly believe that in the state of Kentucky, we should have eviction expungement.
We sure should.
We need to have that, because too many landlords just see that eviction, because you get filed for forcible detainer in the court. It's on your record. Yes. Whether they give you a judgment for forcible detainer, and that's the technical term for eviction, forcible detainer, that's the legal term. And so whether or not you get an actual eviction where the sheriff comes and sets your stuff out, whether you get that or not, filing that forcible detainer affects people's housing in perpetuity, because it remains on their record. And the next place, even if they don't get evicted, they finally get caught up on their rent, right? And they live there for another year and a half. And then they decide they get another job and they make more money and they want to move someplace else. And they go and make the application, and somebody sees, oh, they had a forcible detainer last year. That's a strike against them in the landlord world, and that's unfair. That whether they have that eviction filed or not, it's on their record. And so we want to do everything we can to prevent that forcible detainer record being on their permanent record. So.
Marilyn, oh my goodness, thank you for doing this and talking about we can be for affordable housing and support that. We understand the landlord-tenant relationship. That doesn't mean we're anti-landlord. We just want good quality landlords to, and that support is on both sides. And so you don't know this, but last year and the last quarter of the year, 2 of my daughters were facing eviction court. And they were able to work out an arrangement. Both of them had to move because they just did not have enough money to pay their rent. One moved in with us and one moved in with her sister. But because of working with the judge and the landlord, we were able to get them out without that being on their record, so that when they do make enough money to be able to get their own place again, that isn't staying with them. And I'm telling you, at 47 years old, if you look up my rental history in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I'm originally from, my original evictions that were filed against me, and one of them was an error, are still there.
Yep.
I happened to I was looking for something for my brother, and he asked me to search his name. I said, let me search my name. It's not even my name now. It was my maiden name, Shameka Parrish. And I looked up, and it was like when I was 21, when I was like 22, and that's still there. Thank God that didn't stop us from owning a home. But it is a big barrier. It could. And it is a big barrier, and we need to know that people need to know that you want to end this relationship as best as possible. We moved a lot. I went to 17 schools. We never moved because we got put out. We never moved. My mother just could not afford the rent, but we always cleaned up the apartment. We always turned the kinks in. We always made sure we tried to leave that apartment the way it was when we found it, even when we lived in an efficiency. And that's what me and my daughters did just a few months ago. We went over there. The whole family came. We helped move my daughter out. We helped clean up the place, and the other daughter as well. And I physically drove the keys back to Heritage Green for one of my daughters to turn those in. And they were like, wow. I was like, yeah, I'm turning this in for my daughter. We cleaned up the place. We had pictures. And that makes them be able to go on. And when they're ready to move again, they'll be able to do that. Thank you for lifting that. We're not anti-landlord.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We also have the mediation program, which is the next step from the eviction diversion program that we have been working on for the last couple years.
And that's what they were in.
And so the mediation program has been really successful. And I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but I believe that in the last quarter of the year, we had 124 people go through that mediation. The second quarter of this fiscal year. So October through December, we had like 124 people go through that program. So that's 124 people who don't have an eviction on their record. And that's amazing. That's, we've been able to either get those people moved out or they've been able to stay in the unit and remain housed. And ultimately, our goal is to keep people housed.
Yes.
It is not to get the move out. It is to keep people housed. And so we still have eviction prevention money in the city. It is, I will say, you can go to stopmyeviction.org if you are struggling and you need rental assistance. One of the things that, and you will get in touch with the area community ministries. They are doing some eviction prevention work. The Office of Resilience and Community Services, the neighborhood places, 308-3344, I think is their number. And if you need an appointment for RCS, but if you go through the area community ministries, they're providing rental assistance in combination with housing navigation. And those two pieces are really key because if you're in a unit and your unit is $1,800 a month and you only make $2,500 a month, you're paying too much for rent. And working with that housing navigator at the area community ministries, they will try and find you a unit that is more in line with what you can afford. Because if we just pay your rent, in 2 months, you're going to be back asking for more rent. So we've got to look at the root cause. And a lot of times the root cause is our rent is too expensive. And either we need more employment, which is, that's a whole different discussion.
I say the wages don't match the real estate.
They don't. As a matter of fact, over the last 3 years, our wages have gone up about 15%. And our rents have gone up about 40%, and our home values have gone up about 60%. So we've got more people who can afford less unit now, and that's a problem. That's a real problem. And our housing needs assessment is going to come out in February, and I'm
looking forward to it.
I've seen the numbers, and we've got more people who can afford less at this point because our housing costs have not kept up, our wages have not kept up with our housing costs.
And that is a reason why it's not a part of our questions, but when I am in leadership or I have a decision to make on hiring practices and wages come up, I fight. I work for national organizations who try to set our wages based on, you're in Louisville, Kentucky, the cost of living is low. I said, no. I mean, I'm sorry that the people that work for your organization that live in New York, I think they are paying crazy amounts of rent. But you cannot lowball us in Kentucky based on the cost of living appearing to be lower, because if you become justice involved, it's higher. If you lose your job, it's higher. If you have a health problem and then you don't have the insurance to cover it, your cost of living goes up. And so we don't account for that. And then our wages are low for, as you just named, as things have climbed, people can't afford as much. And I've been in a situation where majority of my money went towards housing. People are literally right now, as we speak, paying 50, 60, 70, and 80% of their income towards a place to live. And then when they have to put the LG&E bill, the water bill, the phone bill, all of that in a hat, guess what? You're going to try to hold on to the rent before anything. I've literally been to the homes of nurses that live in great zip codes who were struggling with utilities. I've been in the homes of people who are able to barely make their mortgage, but they are trying to stay alive and stay afloat. So I'm glad to hear that all of your initiatives include this opportunity to connect people to what they can afford, and also to keep people housed, and also to make, if they have to depart, make it as amenable as possible so that they can connect. Two of those numbers you gave for the over 124 people you helped were my daughters that were in mediation. And people, when we talk about this, most of us are a paycheck two away from being houseless and unhoused. So we all have to do our part. So as an executive director, I fight for my team in that way. And that's what I think all the unionization is about. People are like, I want to know that, back in the day, you can count, you had a job with Ma Bell or one of these established places. You were pretty good. You were good unless you did something crazy. You had a good job for 10 to 15 years. The reality is we don't have that. Many of us will not retire from the same business, the same organization. So we have to take care of people in the now. And that means paying them affordable, livable wages with benefits. So thank you for mentioning that wages piece, because that's huge. And it's huge for the landlords too. Many of them I've met. My last landlord at Hemlock and Southern, he actually worked at Ford full time and managed the property that I rent. So that's them too. It's not all landlords are not millionaires.
Yeah, absolutely not. And my work with eviction prevention, I have come across literally thousands of landlords, and the vast majority of them are just they're one or two rent payments away from losing that rental unit. And the last thing we want to happen is that rental unit to go into foreclosure, and a company out of Texas that comes in, and a corporate company comes in and just buys that unit, and it goes into their portfolio of 3,000 that they own in Louisville. We don't want that to happen.
And then it's an Airbnb, and that takes housing off the market for our constituents and our citizens and our residents.
Or it's a disconnected owner, and the property goes down, and people are staying there and can't reach the management office. There's been a lot of shift, and I don't know if Ben has this in the questions, but you have to deal with a lot of management companies that have owners. I've heard that 60% of the people that own homes in the West End don't live in the West End. And if they don't live in the state, there's a disconnect right there. And if they don't have the right management company, there's people who are reporting they lost. We had a person call into our office who they couldn't find their rent payments. The management person walked out. They don't know where the last payments for all those units were. That is a terrible thing that's happening that doesn't get lifted up. And so if they filed paperwork against that person, it is hard for them to get them to take that back. Because like you said, once that's filed, that's a very serious thing. And so we've been trying to make sure we connect with judges. Legal Aid has been phenomenal in doing that. Equal Justice Center, Louisville Tenants Union, all these people are trying to come up to help people who are renting. We have a big renting population, and I think sometimes as homeowners we forget that there's a great deal of people that are renting, and we need supports all around for them.
I think that's a really important thing that you just said. We have a lot of renters in the city, and rental is not bad. And I think there is a misnomer that renters are not really part of our community, and they are. A lot of people, honestly, the person that ran Metropolitan Housing Coalition for umpteen years, who was so civically active in this community, she was a renter.
Yeah. And Kathy Hingo?
I didn't want to mention that.
Oh, I was going to that's how I got involved in the Housing Trust Fund, was Kathy Hingo. I wrote her name right here because she recruited me while I was at Wayside. And I did not even know she was a renter. Yes. I knew that I was unhoused. And when she mentioned the Housing Trust Fund and why we need people who are unhoused to be speaking, I was like, oh yeah, sign me up. Yeah, she's amazing.
She's amazing, and she's a huge community activist, and she's a renter. And so there's this idea floating around that renters are bad people, and renters don't contribute to the community, and renters are this and they're that, and that's not true. Renters are just as weaved into the fabric of our community as homeowners are.
Yes. And business owners, small business owners.
Right. People want to rent for different reasons. Some people want to rent because, gosh, they don't want to cut grass, or they don't want to shovel snow, right?
Yes.
So, they don't want the burden of having to take care of a piece of property. Some people rent because they can't get the down payment to buy. Some people rent because, they've moved here to take care of an elder parent, and when that person passes away or goes into some other care, they might be moving back. So
that was me, Marilyn. I moved back to Louisville because my father was dying and had to rent. So I tell people I come from the renting community. That meant a lot to me. And I had to find a house to rent, one that was big enough because I had so many kids, but that was on a bus line because my car got repossessed when I got back here. So I think this is so important that you speak on this. And there is an initiative, and I think Tony Curtis, and I know Ben, I stole Ben from
I know you
from
did.
His previous position. But one of the things that I know that they were working on is that renters should benefit from the solar movement and the energy that is being built around there. Because if they're living in the units, we just got solar panels in our house.
Oh, and congratulations.
Yeah, they're turned on and they're working, and I'm waiting for the LG&E bill to reflect it. But they're working on that because these are renters that are taking up these spaces, and they should benefit from the what's coming back into the system,
Absolutely.
what's coming back into the grid. I am so supportive of that. Renters help build a community as well. And thank you. In Shively, we have a great deal of renters, whether they are renting homes or whether they're renting apartment units. There's a great deal of renters, and that's who's been reaching out to us, and we've been able to try to help them. But the information you're giving is going to help everyone feel better. At one point, I did not want to own a home. When I moved back, and after my father died, I wanted to take my mother with me and go back to Florida. But my husband moved back up here, and he said, I want to buy a house. And I let him work on that. And ironically, he bought a house in Shively where Ann Braden and her husband bought a house and transferred it to the Wades. And then that whole thing happened. Right. So it's like full circle, someone who was my mentor. And then now we own a home in a place where they were fighting for housing diversity. That's housing diversity to me. And so we just met with the mayor of Shively last week and this week, and we talked to her about the need, and she's talked to us about the need. So I think that all of us pulling together our resources is what's going to help make Louisville better. I actually think we can do something about affordable housing, land ownership, increasing the housing stock, all of those things together. So I'm excited about this conversation. We need 8 hours, but
we probably
let me hurry up because Ben has questions.
Okay, go ahead, Ben.
I do. I will just try to do this as quick as possible and be respectful of everybody's time. So I think something else that we were thinking about was what do I need if I am a homeowner or a renter to qualify for like the home repair program or eviction diversion? So like what can people do? Like what is needed to get into some of the programs that your office offers?
So the first thing, if you want to reach our office, it's 574-5850. You can just call that number. If no one answers, please leave your name on the voicemail. We will get back to you. You could also go to our webpage, the www.louisvilleky.gov. I almost gave Kentucky Housing's email address. Sorry, that one just fell out. /housing. And you click a thing and it takes you to like a question form, and that comes directly to us, and then we'll get back with you. And we get lots of people that say, how do I get a home through the home buyer program or how do I get rental assistance? So we get a lot of those. We probably get, I'm going to say 20 or 30 of those a week. And I'm really, that's fairly new. It's only been around for about a year and a half, but if you go to the housing site, you can submit a form and it literally comes directly to me. It goes to like 3 other people, but they all come to me so I can just get my eyes on what's going on. I think it's important as a director to know what questions we're getting.
Thank you.
And so they all come to me. You may not get a response directly from me. I may forward it to, our manager of home ownership production, or I may forward it to our planning and design services. They come all kind of questions.
And I will plug here, if you are a District 3 resident, please reach out to our office and I'll be happy to forward this.
Oh, absolutely.
And because I'm no stranger to reaching out to you directly. No. So I can't do that all the time, but if it is something, like that individual who had that furnace need, as it got very cold.
We got it fixed.
So if it's an absolute emergency, you can always reach out to the District 3 office.
Please do reach out.
Yeah.
We have emergency funds, and we just finished one before I walked in for this interview today. A crazy story of a fella who a semi-tractor trailer went down his street and hit the electrical line from his house and pulled his electrical mast pole off his house.
Oh, wow.
And he's been 2 weeks without electricity, and because he couldn't afford to reconnect it himself.
Right.
And so when it got really cold last week, he called the water company and shut off his water, and because he didn't want his pipes to freeze.
Right.
So that was
and
excellent.
Now he doesn't have water.
He doesn't have water, and he didn't have LG&E. And honestly, a district resource officer reached out to Chief Villaro's office, and then they reached out to us and said, is there anything you can do? And so we jumped into action, and we got it fixed. And the contractor left there about 5 o'clock today. They were calling LG&E to get his electric back on. So we do have funds for emergency. If you don't have heat, if a water pipe in your house is busted, we do have some. Now, we don't have a lot, but we do have some that are very specific for these emergencies. If you've got like a code issue, like, your gutter fell off, I'm going to probably, that's not an emergency.
Right.
I'm probably going to refer you to like New Directions or even a church that might have like a handy person who can come out and help you make those repairs.
Or those churches that might have those emergency funds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anything like that for code issues, we will do our absolute best to make sure you get assistance. It may not come directly from the Office of Housing and Community Development, but we actually have a resource list that when we don't have the funds to help you, we can refer you to agencies
like that. Not
do.
a dead end. You can
It's
at least connect them.
It's not. And I will tell you, I cannot stand it when people call me and say, I have called 7 other people and they just keep passing me around.
Yeah.
If you call me and you have been passed around, I am going to find the answer for you, and I am going to get the answer for you, because it is so frustrating, especially when you're not familiar with navigating government. You don't know.
And it's a beast.
That's why we wanted to have this podcast.
And stay online and stay in line and hold on.
Yes.
Give a good callback number and be consistent.
Oh,
and
I'm glad you
persistent.
said that. This is a real problem. People leave me their phone number and they say, call me back. And then I call back and their voicemail hasn't been set up. So if you have that, or your voicemail's full, if you call us, please make sure that your voicemail is not full and that you have voicemail set up so that we can reach you back. That is very, very important.
Oh, thanks for catching that. And I'm guilty of it. So if you did that with me, it's best to call Ben.
I just called Ben. That's
574-1103. That is the best way to get on my calendar, because Ben will not let me. So some of you have been reaching out to me since I transitioned, and please don't take it personal. My voicemail stays full, but I'm working on it. But if you really want to get to me about District 3 issues, call Ben or Dre at 574-1103.
We will get back to you.
You're right about that, though, because when you want to follow up and leave an email address or something, emails usually don't change. Even if you're a transient, you pretty much keep the same email. And most organizations don't want to go on your social. I know when I work for the Bail Project, I'm like, hey, you need to go to court. We sometimes had to message them on social, but that's not, a lot of organizations are not going to have the capacity to go above and beyond. So try to leave clear contact information, or someone will answer the phone and will get you a message.
Yeah, that is really, really important. And I cannot tell you how many times during eviction prevention I would call people back and I couldn't get a hold of them. And even the judges will call in court now. They will actually call.
They will.
And it'll say, the voicemail hasn't been set up or the voicemail's full, and the judges kind of get frustrated with that. So you ask, how do they get in, how do they qualify?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was the question like 20
No,
minutes ago,
amazing.
Ben. So you qualify for our program. You have to be less than 80% of area median income.
And what does that mean? And how is that meant? Like, because looking it up, even me personally,
it's hard to find.
Does it differ by census tract, or is it only Jefferson County?
It's Louisville, Jefferson County metropolitan statistical area.
So that's several counties.
It is several counties. And actually, in my opinion, it's good for the residents of Louisville that it's several counties, because it includes Oldham County.
All the border
counties, and their per capita income, their median income, is a little higher.
I was going to say it's higher.
So it's good for us that we use the MSA, and it qualifies more people. And so for a family for one person, it's like 58 or 60,000. I mean, it's for 80% and below.
That's not bad.
It's a decent number. For a family of 4, it's like 77,000 and some change. I don't really know off the top of my head.
And that's your annual
gross income.
So
that's
before
income.
taxes.
Yes, sir. So that's, most people, they know what they make after taxes. Most people don't know what they make before taxes. So
check them W-2s, y'all.
Right. So it is before taxes, and that's just statutorily, because we use federal funds and they require us to use your gross annual income from all sources. So if you get child support, that's always a tricky one. Some people get ordered child support but don't actually get it.
Right.
And so, we take all of that into consideration. We will try and get you qualified the best we can.
And what's this thing that they've been looking at, student loan? One of my daughters was doing some housing, and I went to college back in the day, 95 to 2012, but one of my daughters said that they were asking about her residuals from school. I'm like, when I was getting housing assistance and like when I lived in the housing projects or getting housing assistance, the projects, I had to mess with him about that. But they didn't look at what you got back in your school from your school monies from left after you bought your books and things like that. Do you know anything about that?
There is some rule. There is some rule that depending on like dependents and whether or not you are a dependent or whether you have dependents, there's all these funky rules about it. So yes, there is some rule about that.
Okay.
And so, our intake specialists know all of those.
And they can break all that down for them.
And they'll help you figure it all out.
That's
yes,
perfect.
ma'am.
So before we let you go, because we know we have a time, and we want you to come back. I think we should update our housing status in the spring.
Absolutely.
And then we just went to, what was that event we went to?
The Kentucky Manufactured
Was that
House.
not exciting?
It was, and we will absolutely have to have you back for another episode. We want to be respectful of everybody's time. We'll have to do a part 2.
Oh, I'm so excited about, first of all, Mayor Greenberg is supporting this endeavor. And so Director Grabowski, who is the interim director at the Office of Resilience and Community Services right now, she is the assistant director at OHCD, and her and I went out to the Manufactured Housing Show last year. And, I will say this. We have been building housing the same way for 100 years, and it takes 9 months to a year to get a house built. And we need, in this community, right now, about 31,000 units. If it takes 9 months to a year, we're never going to catch up.
Not in our lifetime.
And so we've got to think outside of the box about how we actually build or develop housing. And so we went last year, and Laura and I, we were starstruck. It is not your grandma's trailer from 1972. I
lived in one of those trailers
right?
before, yeah.
The modular houses they're not trailers.
No.
It's unbelievable. And the quality is there. So I do want to have that conversation. And, it's not the 15-foot wide, 60-foot long trailer that, we see in a holler in eastern Kentucky right now. It's not.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There is a need for that type of housing in some places. That's not what we're advocating for. We are advocating for manufactured housing that is good quality, sound housing,
yes,
good structure, good bones, and is less affordable and this is my big thing, more energy efficient.
Yes.
Right? Because I can figure out enough way to get subsidy to get somebody in a unit, but if I don't keep their utility bills under control, I'm doing them a huge disservice. So I want to make sure that we note that the product that is coming out of the manufactured world is a much more energy efficient model. And that is a double bonus for us. So faster, quicker, less expensive, and more energy efficient.
And I'll end on this. I lived at 24th and Jefferson on Section 8, and there were times where my utility payments were higher than my rent.
Yep.
A time when my utilities got cut off, I stayed with my mother for a week until they were able to get cut back on. So even on Section 8, I was priced out because of the utility. So you are so on point. The energy efficiency was powerful. And speaking of people in eastern Western Kentucky who are dealing with the weather, terrible weather events, it is important that we always focus on climate change options that also support energy sufficiency. So it's really good to hear you say that. When you come back, we're going to talk about alternative housing and ADUs because we having a big conversation about that
too.
So when you come back in the spring, let's talk about that and how people can access those opportunities.
And let's give it up for these two powerhouses. Thank you both for being here, and we will see you next time on the District 3 podcast.